for the DDA plan, to amend the DDA plan, and then we'll ask you to have the public hearing for the brownfield plan.
Very good. While we have Kathy up there, is there any immediate questions for Kathy before we open for public comment?
Could you give us an example of what some of those expenses might be?
Well, they include actual environmental, dealing with the contamination itself. If things are going to have to be moved around as you're digging in the soil, I believe most of that's going to, or if not all, has to stay on the site because of the nature of it. And if you want more detail, I'll let the attorney and the developer go into more detail. But it also includes such things as roadways and some of the infrastructure that can be used as a cap for that contamination. Those are some of the types of expenses. And that's within the brownfield plan that you see those laid out. We also are able to capture, and we've done this, we haven't done brownfield tax captures very often, but the Benton dealership was one of those, where we can, and actually the former mall site was a brownfield tax capture. We have set up where we can, once all the expenditures are paid off to the developer, we can continue to capture for another 5 years to put that into a general brownfield redevelopment fund that we can use in other places throughout the city, which other cities have used that really to their advantage. We have not been able to do that yet because we haven't had any money going into a fund like that, but eventually someday there will be some money in a fund to be able to do that.
You said 5 years after the project's completed?
Correct. You can continue to capture for 5 years after that to be able to put the additional capture into this fund, which then we can use elsewhere.
So the 5 years would start when?
When the project is complete, when they've been reimbursed for their expenditures. And right now it's a 35-year plan, so 30 years.
Any other questions for Ms. Brubaker-Clark or our counsel or the developer or his counsel before we open to public?
Yes.
Mayor?
I realize the Downtown Development Authority piece is a little different from what we've dealt with in the past, but I mean the two go hand in hand, this and the brownfield. I was just wondering if you could kind of share a few other examples of where we've amended the brownfield for projects in the last few years. I mean, Benton is fairly obvious because that's actually, we still have the street there to do, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really haven't. The tax capture we don't do too often because we've had so many TIFs in areas where projects are proposed. So we have not done this type of thing very often. We actually did it on High Point Flats, another project that Mr. Rooks is involved with, to be able to capture those funds. Now, in that case, it's not in the DDA, so those go directly to the developer. Benton also was not within a DDA, so this is really the first time that we've done something where we've done it within the DDA. We don't. I mean, it's good to do if you have a significant project like this. It's complicated, as we've seen going through the process, and it is only for this one piece of property. But it is a possibility to do on other properties in the future if we wanted to look at that option.
Okay. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to this issue? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution approving and adopting amendments for the Downtown Development Authority, and the amendments are for the inclusion of the property owned by Terrace Point Landing.
So moved.
But we also need to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
And yeah.
Adopt the resolution.
And adopt the
adopt the
resolution.
resolution. And adopt the resolution.
And adopt the resolution.
So that Commissioner Hood, you started out didn't you?
Started out, but Mr. Tucker finished.
We got to get it straight. Okay.
A joint.
It has been moved by Commissioner Hood and seconded by Commissioner Turnquist to approve the resolution approving and adopting amendments for the Downtown Development Authority And the amendments are for the inclusion of property owned by Terrace Point Landing and close the public hearing. Any discussion and questions in the body? If not, vote please.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Wieringo?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now we have its sibling coming up here in item C.
Amendment to Brownfield Plan, Terrace Point Landing LLC Planning Economic Development. Summary request to hold a public hearing and approve the resolution approving and adopting the amendment for the Brownfield Plan. The amendments are for the inclusion of property owned by Terrace Point Landing LLC in the Brownfield Plan. Staff recommendation to hold the public hearing and approve the resolution, authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the resolution. Committee recommendation. The Muskegon City Commission set the public hearing for May 14, 2013 at their April 9, 2013 meeting. Since that time, a notice of the public hearing has been sent to taxing jurisdictions. In addition, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority approved the plan amendment on April 9, 2013, and further recommends that the Muskegon City Commission approve the plan amendment.
And everything you said before applies to this too, doesn't it, Ms. Brubaker-Clark? You don't want to reiterate anything? Oh, no, I don't think so. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to Part 2? If not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. I started with close the public hearing first, so we don't trip up, and adopt the amendment for the Brownfield plan. And the amendments are for the inclusion of property owned by Terrace Point Landing. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I would move that we close the public hearing and adopt the resolution making the described amendments to the Brownfield plan and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
It has been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Wieringo, to close the public hearing and approve the resolution approving and adopting the amendment for the Brownfield plan. The amendments are for the inclusion of the property owned by Terrace Point Landing, and when it all comes down this end of the desk, I'll sign it. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Vote, please.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Wieringo?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Good luck.
On to new business.
Agreement for transportation services with Wakefield Corporation to provide senior transit services, Public Works. Summary request. Authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement for transportation services for senior transit services with Wakefield Corporation out of Muskegon. The proposed agreement is for a one-year term starting the 1st of July 2013 and ending at the end of June 2014. Staff recommendation, authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement and direct staff to incorporate into the 2013-2014 budget.
Thank you.
Are we moving on that?
Can I get a motion?
I would move that we approve the agreement for transportation services with Wakefield Corporation to provide senior transit services.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Markowski, seconded by Commissioner Wieringo, to approve the agreement for transportation services with Wakefield Corporation to provide senior transit services. Questions, comments? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Perhaps we could get staff to, it's not entirely clear to me reading this, how that reimbursement process works, because it appears that we're making large block payments, and, you know, I want to make sure that we're actually paying for the services provided. So is there somebody can clarify that a little bit?
Mr. El Chattel?
I'm sorry, forgive me, the payment, is that what you were asking about, sir?
Yeah, as I read through the material, it appears that we're paying in chunks.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering what's the mechanism for ensuring that we're paying for services that have actually been provided? You know, I want to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for with this service, just as we would with any contract.
Exhibit D, if you will, is the sample sheet that we would have to reconcile at the end of every month or quarterly, depending on the number of services that they have provided and or the rights. So if they provide enough, if you will, to get the first the second $10,000 is really when it kicks in, because the first one is going to be almost automatic to kind of give them some incentive and cash flow to get going with the program. But it will be reconciled on a monthly and or quarterly or every other month on an as-need basis, if you will. It's going to be in their best interest to let us know, and show us the database or the spreadsheet of how many rides and the names of those individuals that they provided the rides with and the ID card that we will be issuing.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions?
Clears it up.
Commissioner
The
Turnquist?
payments are made in increments of 2,000
10.
on rides of 2,000, then 4,000 and 6,000. And if they never use the 6,000 rides, that payment would stop?
Correct. So we thought of providing some type of an incentives for both parties, if you will. We're going to pay the money, and it's going to be in the city's best interest. That it's going to encourage them, if you will, to go out there, be respectful, solicit additional rides, be nice, accommodating, and all of that stuff. So there is some incentives, financial incentive for them to attract more than just 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000. So we want them to get up to the 6 or 7 or 8,000 rides. And then when they get up to the 8,000 rides, then this obviously the terms of the contract would have to be modified or amended. But if we get to 8,000 rides, then we have accomplished a great deal, thanks to Mrs. Markowski.
Okay.
And maybe I've missed it in the exhibits that you've provided, but you said that we will be issuing the cards.
Yes.
And how will that operate from a resident standpoint? What would the steps be in order for the resident to get started?
They would have to apply that. They would have to give us the information that they had given us before, which is birth dates and income and all of that stuff, and we would issue those cards, I guess.
And so, which department would they be calling?
Public Works, 724-4100.
Okay, I do appreciate that there is a accommodation here for background checks. I know that was a concern of some folks when we put this proposal forward, so I appreciate that.
We do listen once in a while.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, the vote, please.
Commissioner Wieringo?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item B, please.
Reclassification of water filtration plant supervisor position, Public Works. Summary request. Change the classification of the filtration plant supervisor position from range 3B to range 3A. The requested change, if approved, we feel will enhance the city's ability to attract more qualified candidates to fill the soon-to-be vacant position as a result of the resignation of current supervisor. Staff recommendation, approve the reclassification of the filtration plant supervisor position from range 3B to range 3A.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I would move that we approve the reclassification of the filtration plant supervisor position from range 3B to range 3A.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Mayor Spataro, seconded by Commissioner German. Where am I? To approve the reclassification of the filtration plant supervisor position from range 3B to range 3A range. Any discussion or comments on this? Not? May we have the vote, please?
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Wieringo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item C.
Special event request, Coast West Music Festival, Planning Economic Development. Summary request. The festival group of Muskegon County has filled a special event application for the first Coast West Music Festival to be held at Heritage Landing July 1st through the 6th of 2013. There is one request on their application that requires City Commission approval, and that is to keep one of the beer tents open until midnight rather than 11. They will still turn the music off at 11 to comply with the noise ordinance. The later closing time will allow for people to leave gradually rather than a mass of people at once when the music ends. Staff recommendation, none.
Vice Mayor?
Well, so we can begin discussion, I would move that we authorize the request to keep one of the beer tents open until midnight, with the proviso that the music be turned off at 11 and that Coast West comply with the noise ordinance.
Second.
It has been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Wieringo, to allow or approve Coast West to keep one beer tent open until midnight rather than 11 o'clock, with the music still being turned off at 11, and the organization complying with the noise ordinance. Ms. Brubaker-Clark.
I'm not sure if our police chief wants to address this tonight or not, but I know we have some concerns as staff on keeping the beer tents open later. If you do choose to do that this evening, because we have set some precedent so far with allowing that with at least one other festival, I think this is something we may want to look at for next year of changing that. That's just staff's feeling on it. I don't know if you want to say any more.
Chief?
We've already done this once this year.
You know, I'd also like to see some standardization so we don't have some closing at 11, some closing at 12. Because what happens to us, being the police department, is that hour goes on and those people are served. They've been being served for hours. You know, can lead to intoxication, and we have to keep all our staff there much later to mitigate, which there is a cost that the festival planners have to understand that could be quite a bit higher than what they anticipate. And also, usually when these events go on for several days at a time, those hours add up and our staff does not get any bigger, doesn't inflate. And so towards the end of those events, the staff can become, you know, exhausted, not to mention the costs go up. And I'd like to see we select a time and stick with it instead of we have these different times. Some close at 11, some close at 12. You know, possibly maybe serving until 11, and then they have until 11:30 to the tent to be cleared out. Because I think now they're closed. They're stopped serving around 10:30 or so, and I wouldn't mind if they served right up to 11, but they have to be gone by 11:30.
So I'm getting a feeling that the comfort level for a 12 o'clock shut-off isn't necessarily there.
I would prefer not, and like I said, especially with the mixed times, some closing at 11, some closing at 12.
So staff, would you need additional time to evaluate? And you mentioned looking at a more uniform system for across the board for events within the city.
Right, and I think that would serve all our establishments, along with the beer tents and the other established liquor, control licenses we have in the city. I think we need to be fair across the board to all.
Commissioner Markowski.
I just want to be clear, the festivals are incurring the entire cost of the officers during the times that they're at the event. Is that correct, as far as any overtime or additional charges of the officers on scene? Is that correct?
They would have to incur the cost, and when I talked to another event, I said there'd be quite a bit extra for that. They didn't understand because we'd already given a price till the 11 o'clock, and when they changed the hour, they didn't understand why it was going up. But we have to keep our entire staff there that time for that one tent. Because generally those other tents closed, everyone goes to that one location. It's like the people go home.
And have we looked at requesting other jurisdictions, whether it's Sheriff's Department or retired officers, to partake in part of these events, or do you feel that it needs to be active duty officers at all times?
Well, it has to be active duty officers, because the reason we're there is if there is a type of incident, we have to have the ability to take action. And if we had security guards or what other form of security would be, they would not have the enforcement action. And they also don't have that deterrent factor. When our police officers are there at those tents, even the intoxicated citizens understand that is the police, and they have to comply.
Would a motion be in order at this time, Mr. Mayor?
Well, the motion is on the floor.
Motion is on the floor to approve?
To approve at this point.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Hood?
I agree that the later ending time is not going to move anyone out gradually, because
my experience, they all go to that same tent. The one that's open the latest and stay until it's closed, and then they leave. And later they drink, I think the more problems we'll end up having.
I think the request, and maybe we can clarify, but I think the suggestion is not necessarily that everyone would leave a beer tent at a different time, but that if you change the time that the music ends versus when the beer tent ends, half the people who aren't drinking are going to leave when the music ends. Other people might stay longer. So, yes, maybe that crowd would stay longer, but I think they're anticipating breaking up the times of a mass exodus of people so that less people would be leaving at once. And I don't know if we can ask Nick there if he wants to clarify that, but that's my understanding of what their request entails.
Vice Mayor?
Well, there is a representative from the festival here. Perhaps they could explain the reasoning behind the request and help us make a better informed decision.
We just need your name and address.
Sure. Good evening. Nick Bessinger, 4440 Henry Street. The goal of keeping the festival at least one tent open until midnight is to, when you have 17,000 fans and having security line up on one side of the festival grounds and shoving everyone out, it actually causes more chaos than it is than have people gradually leave. You are going to have your fans that are there to leave once the music ends because that's what they're there. The people who are not going to leave are the ones that want to continue to stay and have that fellowship and networking. And having them go to one central location while we're getting everyone out of the event will allow for those people to gradually leave at the same time. So our goal is not to keep people to drink. It's to get them out of the festival in instead of a rush manner, more of a gradual manner.
And you have 11 o'clock as far as the time being open for the tent, but what time do you stop serving alcohol?
Stop serving at 11:30. So there's a half hour from 11:30 p.m. until midnight will be that time where we're doing the gradual, it's time to go, security, get everyone out. So
I guess my logic is I understand the logic behind the request. Maybe we're worried about the lateness of it, but I don't know if there's somewhere in the middle that we could meet. Or
I know there's the logic of the request, and what the thinking may be. But I think the other issues, as Chief brought up, as far as full staffing for the one area, and the other thing too is the discontinuity between festivals. I would be more in tune with revisiting this on a larger level, even as a fairness issue, or the other the other festivals and beer tents who currently have the requirement to shut down at 11 o'clock, correct?
I think the compromise here we're trying to show, if we're going to be open later, to allow them to serve up until 11, which right now they're de-escalating at 11 or 10:30, to allow those multiple locations to serve till 11, but then the buffer would be between 11 and 11:30. And so when the people are in different locations, and we are, let's say, herding them out, they're not all at one location. They're at these other locations, and they're moving towards other establishments that are open later, which are the brick and mortars that stay open till 2 a.m. And they can, at that point, between the 11 and 11:30, migrate to those other locations, and that could help mitigate it because they're stopped serving out at 10:30. So that's where we're trying to find some middle ground there.
Well, we do have a motion. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, doing things on an ad hoc basis really turns out well, and we've already made one exception this year. I would like to see, regardless of how this goes, I do think, as we've experienced in the past, we know the strain that supporting these kind of public festivals puts on our department, just in human terms. I'm not even thinking about cost, but just in human terms. Our officers have families and home lives, and by the end of the summer, they're mostly on forced overtime and burning out, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So it may be time to have our staff, including the chief, meet with some of the key event planners, whether that's the county's Convention and Visitor Bureau people, the directors of some of the larger festivals like Coast West, Unity, and so on, and see if we can work out some ways to handle these issues so we are being fair to everybody and we are staying within basically the capacity we have to support them. So I'd like to see that happen regardless of what we vote on, or which way we vote tonight.
Right, and I take your point, the ad hoc nature of addressing these things willy-nilly. It's, I think we need to gain a sense of uniformity so that, you know, we're on the same page as far as our services as they're rendered, you know, to these type of events. Any other questions or comment, Commissioner Markowski?
Just last thing would be is whether we think we can accomplish that by the next general meeting, as I know that many of these festivals plan for this summer, and maybe we won't accomplish it as to what they're hoping for, but I do think that they need to know what the schedule is for the summer. So if we can manage to have that meeting in the next 2 weeks, I'm just checking to see if that's likely.
I don't know if that's,
I wouldn't think that we would want to rush that. We've met with those groups in the past and discussed items of common interest. And I think that this would be another one of those, and we would probably be better served doing that towards the end of the season, so that we're putting something in place in terms of a policy change for next year.
And I simply asked that because, so this would affect, if we're not going to do it soon, you just consider that this will affect them for this entire season.
What the commission has done in the past, you have a special event policy, and it sets out the parameters for the special events. What it says is that if there are any requests for deviations from that policy, that that request come to the city commission, and that's
as it is tonight.
That's what's happening tonight.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, the vote, please.
Mayor Gallren?
No.
Commissioner Hood?
No.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
No.
Commissioner German?
No.
Commissioner Waringo?
No.
Commissioner Turnquist?
No.
Commissioner Markowski?
No.
Motion fails.
And that is not a reflection on Coast West
No, not at
at
all.
all, nor any other festival when we don't make these accommodations. There's a larger picture here is brought up by staff and some of the experience from commissioners that have served for a while and have seen these things. But we continue to wish you the best of luck this season, and we'll see you down at Heritage Landing. Item D, please.
New Neighborhood Enterprise Zone District Planning Economic Development. Summary request to establish a new Neighborhood Enterprise Zone NEZ district within the city limits. The new location is at the Terrace Point Condominium Project site. Properties located in NEZ districts are eligible to apply for NEZ certificates, which will lower the property tax with the new construction. Staff recommendation, approval of the new NEZ district.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I would move that we approve the new NEZ district as described.
Second.
It has been moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Waringo to approve the new Neighborhood Enterprise Zone District. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. This request would establish a new district. The city is allowed to have up to 15% of its total size as eligible NEZ districts. This one is about 11 acres. It would leave us with about another 10 to 11 acres in the future if we wanted to designate another zone. And basically, it's an economic development tool to encourage development. There are rehab zones and new development zones. The rehab zones would encourage the residents to make improvements to their homes, and the new development would encourage people to develop in these zones.
Very good. Questions, comments from the Commission? Vice Mayor?
Just one comment. I mean, I've heard over the last few weeks and months about some of the economic development tools that we use, and does that unfairly benefit one developer or another? And I think it's important to remind the general community that a lot of the projects that we're talking about are not particularly easy to put together. When there's a big grant to pay for your water and your sewer and your roads, like in some of our neighboring communities, and then the developer just has clean soil with blueberry bushes on it in order to build, you don't have some of the complexity and expense that you have in a situation where, this is all filled. So there's issues with the quality of the soil, there's issues with what is in the soil, how it has to be remediated. And so these are some of the tools that the state and the federal government have given us to make sure that properties like this don't lie fallow indefinitely, that they are put back to the productive use at a cost that returns a reasonable return on the investment made by the developer who's trying to put that project together. And so that's why I've supported these kinds of economic development tools, tax abatements, the tool in dye makers, renaissance zones, and so on, because they are tools that allow us to keep our local economy afloat and help our businesses thrive and grow the community. And I think this certainly is a site that merits this kind of assistance given the nature of what's there.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Hood?
What exactly is enterprise zone district?
Once you're in the district, that parcel is eligible for a certificate. What the certificate does is it amends the real property value.
I guess what I'm asking is, what makes the neighborhood an enterprise zone? What are the qualifications to be considered an enterprise zone?
Each city is allowed up to 15% of their city to be in it. There's really no qualification as to income levels or anything like that. It can be designated anywhere as long as you aren't over that 15%. And once you're in the district, then you're eligible, the property owner is eligible to apply. So just being in the district doesn't reduce the taxes. There would actually have to be a project involved.
Okay. Commissioner Markowski?
A couple questions. One is the attachment we received in our packet here shows a map and the Edison Landing section as well as Terrace Point. It's all kind of highlighted in blue. The outline in red, you know which little map I'm referring to?
Yeah, I haven't seen it in about a week, so I'm not.
What I'm trying to clarify is whether this encompasses only the new development or if it encompasses everything in blue, which on my map includes Edison Landing as well as the shoreline.
Everything in blue, that's just the zoning classification.
Okay.
That's a zoning map, so it would only be outlined in red, which would all be new
The
development.
Terrace Point.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess I'm hoping for a little bit of expansion on previous projects we've done, which might not fall under this type of a finance situation, but renaissance zones and things like that throughout the city, and whether we feel those have entirely been successful. Because my somewhat frustration with this project is not that there won't be new and shiny homes, but that we're hoping for new and shiny homes to have more taxes in our city and bring new residents, and then we're lowering the taxes of the people coming into the city. So we really need to clarify the justification of that.
I believe, with this, it really will help. It's like Larry pointed out, that it's an incentive to someone to develop on a piece of land that may not be pristine and ready to go and shovel ready. It's giving them that extra incentive to go ahead and invest that money. It's not. We feel it's something that without it, people aren't necessarily just going to come and then they're going to take advantage of it. And with the Renaissance zones, we've seen that very strongly, that a lot of businesses did come down, at least to rent out of the Renaissance zones, because of that tax advantage. They didn't just so happen to like that area and say, well, great, this is a great location, but we also get this incentive on top of it. We feel pretty strongly that it was definitely a good tool to incentivize people.
And what is the duration of the reduction in property taxes?
It can go up to 15 years on NEZs.
And what is the percentage of property tax reduction?
It's the actual lot the property is the same, but the real property on there is taxed at half of the state average, and they come up with a state average, and we pay half of that. In 2008, I believe, I mean, it changes from year to year, but the last data I could find was about 16 mils they were charged.
Please.
I think it's important to note, I think Mike mentioned 15 years, but the proposal is for 12 years. And the other thing I would say about the benefit to the city, in addition to receiving the 50% of the property taxes, is that the city will still receive the income taxes that are generated from the property owners who reside in these houses, which is important.
And even at the 50%, it's more than what we're receiving now because there's nothing down there except for old foundry fill.
Are we taxing income on those who have second homes? In the event that people choose to use this as their second home, would we be capturing income tax on those individuals?
That's probably a better question for Ken Grant, but I think it has to do with where your principal residence is.
Primary residence, okay. I just want to throw that out there as, that is an option that might occur on this property.
But in that case, then, they wouldn't get the homestead exemption on their property taxes, which would generate more property taxes in that case.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Anything in addition, Mike?
No.
Okay. If not, the vote, please.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Wieringo,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist,
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski,
Yes.
Mayor Gowron.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Let's move some dirt, John.
Thank you.
I got a hard hat at home. I'll come down with the shovel.
Well, I'll come down with our hard hats on. Oh, we still have public participation.
I apologize. There was one item that wasn't printed out this evening, but the city manager will go ahead and take.
At your meeting last night, we had a lengthy discussion about the Pere Marquette Park proposals, and I apologize that it didn't get on the agenda for tonight, but it was intended to be, and I think you're prepared to address that tonight after the discussion that occurred last night. And if you're prepared to move forward with that, we would be willing to offer a proposed motion for you if you would so desire.
Well, I think we owe it to people to move on this, because if we delay it another few weeks, we'll be lucky to have something there by midsummer as it is. Every delay reduces the likelihood of something getting started, so.
You would entertain your motion?
Well, the motion we would suggest is that the city commission waive the deadline for the submittal of the proposals for the Pere Marquette Park request for proposals, and award the proposal of the Harris Hospitality Group, and authorize the city manager and city attorney to negotiate an agreement with the Harris Hospitality Group, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute such agreement.
So moved.
Pardon me?
So moved.
She moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Markowski, seconded by Commissioner Wieringo, to waive the deadline requirement for the request for proposal and award the proposal to Harris Hospitality Group, and authorize the manager and city attorney to enter into negotiations for a contract, correct?
And authorize the mayor and clerk to execute.
And authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute. Discussion? Questions?
I do think at least one of us needs to say that there was quite a bit of discussion yesterday on this topic. Many of us were concerned about the fact that this particular proposal came in later than the other two. I was concerned about that because we do have a number of sealed bid processes that we follow where this would be very, very inappropriate. But the staff were able to convince me at least that this was more of an open bid process, and that since we were not purchasing a service, that this would not be setting a precedent for, say, a contractor for a street or for vehicles or that kinds of things, where this could be very harmful for bid requests in the future. So we did talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not done without that review process having been taken.
Right. Commissioner Hood?
Okay, so is this a bid or proposal?
This is a proposal.
Okay.
Right. We're not paying for anything. Commissioner Markowski?
The other thing, if we're just expounding on last night, is we did also ask whether the other proposals, those business owners had been notified of the third proposal, and they had been aware of it, and hadn't requested to change their proposal in any way at that time. So.
Very good. Anything else? If not, the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Waringo?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Gallren?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Good. We'll get the building cleaned up and go have some frozen yogurt.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other business from the commission? Vice Mayor?
Well, there was another item I thought we were going to be seeing on here tonight, but we need to, I think, do two things. One is to authorize the transmittal of the draft of the recruitment brochure to our consultant, and we need to designate a contact person for the city of Muskegon for the consultant.
Yes.
The former has been done.
Okay.
We did that today because that was the commitment that we had made to the consultant. So that was sent to the consultant. The draft document was sent today. But the other item that you mentioned should be dealt with.
Okay. Well, I would be, there was consensus on the draft, I think, last night, so that's
Yes.
fine. I would move that we designate the city attorney to be the contact between the city of Muskegon and the consultant for the remainder of the recruitment process.
Second.
It has been moved by the Vice Mayor and seconded by Commissioner German to appoint the city attorney as the contact person representing the city with the consultant during the remainder of the manager recruitment and search. Discussion? Questions? If not, the vote, please.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Waringo?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Markowski?
Yes.
Mayor Gallren?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Spataro?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good, thank you. Any other business from the commission before I open to public comment? Yeah, thank you. Mr. Bill Hammond, if you'd like to address the commission, if you'd please come to the podium and give your name and address. Individuals that are approaching to speak are given 3 minutes to address the commission. And Mr. Hammond, take her away.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of things, but one's really important to me.
First, need your name and address.
Okay. Bill Hammond. Right now I live at 1700 Willowbrook in Genesee, Michigan, but I have a house here in Muskegon. The thing on property taxes, they should have a requirement that the person who actually pays the taxes are at least acknowledged, put down, instead of automatically whoever the property is deeded to gets credit for the taxes being paid. So in my case, I paid taxes for 40 years on a house that I thought I owned, but I found out the deed never got registered, and so it was recorded as belonging to somebody else. And if somebody comes back on my tax return and say, hey, you didn't pay those taxes because it's registered in the other person's name, I could have a backlash on that. And I'd like to get the credit for at least paying the taxes.
Have you had conversation with the county treasurer?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I had 1 year in '08 that the taxes were paid late, so then I had to go to the other building. They recorded that I had paid the taxes. But if you're paying them on time, which I usually do, they get recorded that my niece paid the taxes, which she has no longer been involved in the house for over 20 years.
So you just need to get it fixed with the county treasurer.
Yeah, and so that it's always does that. Right now I'm in the process of getting an attorney and trying to get this all straightened out so my name gets on the deed.
Okay. Have you been to the Register of Deeds?
Yep.
Okay.
I've been for the last 10 days coming from Jenison over here just about every day trying to get stuff straightened out and finding why it was that way. And I found out when I bought it from my grandfather back in 1969, he didn't record the land contract, nor the deed was not recorded, and then the deed got caught in a fire accident I had in my home, so it never got recorded at all. And there's a big gap in there. Even if I was trying to sell the property, I couldn't do it because that gap's in there. And when I took out a land contract to sell to my nephew, it shows I sold it, but how did it get to me? Nothing's shown. So I've been having a bad week.
It's I think you're going to have to spend another few days going back over to the county department, seeing as how those are the people that ride herd on the deeds as well as the property taxes as well.
I'd like to see it put into where they have to record who actually paid the taxes.
I would certainly pass that along, both yourself and others, to Treasurer Tony Malatsios.
Of course, the other issue is in some of these stiff fines they have for vacated properties, you know, the house is empty and stuff. I actually pay somebody to stay there to babysit the house, which I've been paying for somebody to babysit a house that wasn't even listed as mine.
Oh, dear.
And then when I got a divorce in 1990, I had to pay my ex-wife half the valuation of a house that wasn't mine.
Oh, dear.
Well,
I've had some pretty bad times.
at least you get to drive over to beautiful Muskegon from Jenison. Good luck with the county.
Well, I lived here for a long time. I lived here since I was 3.
But that's the only counsel I can give you at this time is that you have to continue to work with those two county departments as far as the deeds and registration and with the county treasurer.
Are we going to work then on trying to get that established to where we can have a recording of who actually pays taxes on properties?
That would be county treasurer's function.
They always say it's somebody else's. I went back and forth from one door to the other. No, it's their thing. No, it's their thing. And just got to a point where I forgot which door led to who.
And Carol Merrill was behind door number 3.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. James Rudisill.
My name is James Rudisill, Senior, and I live at 3639 Marina View Point in Harbortown. Back in the 1970s, I was the business manager of IBW Local 275, and during that time, I was very involved in Muskegon civic and governmental affairs. I was the treasurer of Muskegon County United Way, and before coming the chairman, and after that, I became the chairman of the board for 2 years. I served on the Muskegon County Economic Development Commission and was chairman of the Muskegon County Energy Commission. I worked with Dick Anderson with the help of the City Commission on the early development of Harbortown. In 1980, I went to work for the IBW International Union and traveled the United States and Canada for nearly 30 years before retiring here 3 years ago. I have watched as we lost most of our large foundries and most of the chemical plants with a lot of our industrial base, just like many other places in the United States. I also watched both the county and the city step up to the plate many times to take steps to clean up our lakeshore. I remember working for Whitaker Electric as a young electrician apprentice at a scrap metal processing firm located in what is now known as Heritage Landing. I remember well doing a trouble call with another journeyman electrician walking through oil-laden scrap metal and telling the journeyman a large pile of scrap metal was smoking and no one paid any attention. That was just an everyday event. But that night the place went up in flames. Now fortunately for me, we ended up, spent the winter rebuilding a lot of the electrical components after the fire. None of this would have happened without the county and the city of Muskegon. While some always find fault with government, very little would have happened with our lakefront cleanup without the cooperation of federal, state, and local units of government, as well as private funds and donations. I've recently been encouraged by the various units of government doing what they can to create a lot more cooperation within our county. As a result of that cooperation, I believe we have become a great place to live, work, and build a business, and best of all, retire. Many of the growing companies here in the Muskegon were former employees of those former companies that closed at one time and that employed thousands of citizens. During my career with the IBEW, I traveled to well over 250 cities, towns throughout the United States, from New York City to Los Angeles and everything in between, plus most major cities in Canada. There are a few of those cities and towns that have what we have here in Muskegon County, and I believe we're on the verge of a new day here in Muskegon County. I've come here today to give each of the commissioners a book entitled Tipping Point, because I believe that's where we're at right now. And I'll hand those after my remarks. You will find an insert in the front of the book, and I'm asking each of you to read the book and pass it on to someone you think can make a difference here in Muskegon. And some of you may have already read the book. In addition, I'm asking each of you to purchase an extra book so we can spread the concept contained in the book faster. For those you give the book to, please ask them to do the same thing and buy an extra copy, and ask them to buy an extra copy. I have also enclosed in the back of the book a speech my son made last week in the West Michigan Shoreline Development Commission meeting last week, talking about a branding concept for Muskegon. I think you're all aware of what he has done with the Muskegon Winter Sports Complex that brings people in here from all over Michigan and surrounding states. I should also mention what a great job Kathy Evans has done in securing and overseeing the cleanup of our lakeshore. And I hope you find the book useful, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudisill.
Not often you get a gift.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's big too. Thank you, sir.
Your name's in the front of it, I believe, if I got them in the right order.
Thank
And
you.
a place to sign off.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess I could do that.
Mr. Steve Warmington in the audience.
Yes, he is. I was so surprised.
You look
to see
awfully
him.
familiar.
No.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Steve Warmington, 1524 Lakeshore Drive, Muskegon. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners,
Hello, good to see you.
nice to see you. Running late?
Pardon me?
Running late. What's the name of that book, Jim? Tipping Point. I wish I was the author of Tipping Point, because he made some good money tonight. That was very kind of you, Jim. Listen, I'm here tonight as a representative of the Bike Time. Hey, man, the Bike Time Board, and I wanted to let you know, first of all, that I followed in the newspaper the new farmers market in downtown Muskegon, and I'm extremely proud of you as a body for voting the new Muskegon's farmers market in, and certainly the people that are making the financial portion of that possible. But I have to say that I was surprised and disappointed to hear that the city is not willing to consider closing the farmers market for one day in 2014 and on for the Muskegon Bike Time event. And I also understand that there's a possibility that a portion of Western Avenue would not be allowed to be closed because of the farmers market. Now, as you well know, the Bike Time event has been very, very good for the city of Muskegon and Muskegon County. We've received a lot of exposure over those 6 years, and it's an event that actually this year was recognized as one of the top 5 motorsporting community events out of 20,000 presented throughout the USA by a motorsports magazine. I believe now it's probably Muskegon community's largest event as far as bringing folks into our community. Over the last 6 years, it has supported 22 nonprofits in Muskegon with contributions. This event brings visitors from across the country. If you've walked down there, you've seen license plates on motorcycles from all over this country and parts of Canada. And we have a beautiful community to share with them. This event fills our hotels and our restaurants and brings in a lot of outside dollars that's spent in our community. It also brings an overall sense of pride to the members who live in our community, of our community. I can recall 6 years ago when I first took the corner at 7th and Western and looked down there, and our downtown Western Avenue didn't look like we were in Muskegon at all. It looked like an event, and it has turned out to be an event. Now, a survey that was conducted by the event has shown that there's a couple of things about Bike Time that you may find interesting. Number one is that the people come from out of town. They love the fact that it's on Western Avenue. I know I talked to the mayor, and back when I served with the city, we met with the Department of Public Works and the Michigan Department of Transportation about the possibility, perhaps, of moving it down to Shoreline Drive. But from this study, we can see that moving it down to Shoreline Drive would lose some of its ambience of the storefronts that we have down on Western Avenue. So I'm here to let you know that there's other communities that have done what we've done in the past, for the past 6 years, of making some changes that are a little bit uncomfortable in our community. When we first asked for Western Avenue to be closed from Terrace to 7th, it was a tough decision for the commission at that time. But look at the event that turned out to be. You take a look at Woodward Avenue down for the Dream Cruise in Detroit and the changes that makes for that city. And also the cruise that they have in Grand Rapids, where it takes Kentwood, Wyoming, and the city of Grand Rapids to work together when they close 28th Street. So I'm hoping that the City Commission will reconsider the use of that particular property, which will become city property, and albeit it'll be used as a farmer's market, it'll probably be known as a farmer's market, it is the city of Muskegon's property, and we should be allowed to take one Saturday of each year and close it for an event that brings so much enjoyment and economic value to our community. I'm afraid that if we don't reconsider, what's going to happen is what has turned out to be a very large regional and perhaps will grow into a much larger national event. We've always said it's the fastest growing motorcycle event in the country, and it has been, bringing in over 250,000 people and 60,000 motorcycles to our community. But I believe, so that you know, our contract with our promoter is up this year. And we'll be hiring a new promoter for this event. And the reason why I'm here at this time, we discussed it at a board time meeting. When's the appropriate time to come to the City Commission to discuss this? And because of that contract being up, and because of a new promoter, and because events like this and other events that we have in this community takes sponsorships, people to come forward and bring the money, and also when you have vendors that make commitments a year ahead to come to this community, they want to know what's going to be there. So as of right now, with a new promoter, from the information that we've received, we can't tell them what's going to be available for us as an event. So we would certainly hope that the City Commission will reconsider. We're more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with you, because if not, I'm afraid the bike time event that we've known over the last 6 years will likely become just a local event at a local venue, and it will be a great loss of positive exposure for our community. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Well, Mr. Mayor? Steve?
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, you know, that obviously the decision to move the market was not an easy one, and the vendors whose livelihood is dependent on the market are concerned that their dates where they're making money, which is their livelihood, would be nibbled away because of special events. And so they were assured that the market priority would be for the market vendors. So what I would recommend is that Bike Time make arrangements to meet with the market master and the vendors and see if there's a way for the market and the event to collaborate. I think there might be some opportunities there, and with some discussion, I found that the vendors, for the most part, are thoughtful, hardworking people who understand opportunities to make a return on their investment. And I think that could be a productive discussion, and perhaps there's less conflict than there appears.
I would agree with that. I would first of all say that there isn't any conflict as far as we're concerned. As a board, we're in whole agreement with the farmers market. We actually like the location. It's just that we'd like one day. My comment to that, Vice Mayor, would be number one is that there's also other local business communities in the downtown Muskegon area right now that probably would be here to testify to tell you how important this event is to them. And I understand where the farmers are at. I understand that it's a short season for them. But I'm wondering whether they would have the market open for 2 days that week instead of 3. I would say that the Bike Time Board is more than happy to meet with the farmers, but my suggestion would be, if that is to be held, then we need the city to be involved, because that piece of property is going to be the city's piece of property. It is the city and the city commission that will make the final determination as to how that property is used. So we're more than willing to sit, but we think the city needs to be at that table at the same time.
Steve, what I'll do is I'll come up with a determination on how to go through with communication. We could, there's a couple things we can do, but we'll do it sooner than later.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of commissioners, some staff to sit, but I think we'll start at with commission representation and staff representation first.
Absolutely fine.
So,
that's what we're here. We want to open
Are you back on the board now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
We'd love to open the dialogue. I would just hope that you would keep in mind we've got some timelines as far as new people coming in with that contract. I for one, thought we should probably hold this off till the Bike Time event, but when we had that meeting today, I understand that in order for us to move forward and plan 2014, we actually have to be doing that right now.
The sooner these kind of issues are resolved, the better it is for all involved.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Warmington.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment? Just simply that you mentioned the Dream Cruise in Detroit, and I just wanted to bring up as an example, I was at the inaugural Dream Cruise. I'm originally from Ferndale, and so along the way, that event did have to change. And it's still wildly popular and grew more and more popular every year, but it had to change from the residents' perspective and the event slightly for people to accommodate going through it. So it used to be 4 lanes of traffic on each side of the road. It was open just to the cruise. They shut everything down, and they realized that while that was great for people at that event, other people that weren't necessarily attending that event still had to be able to move through that space. So they were able to work out compromises, but over time that event did change due to some of these kinds of issues. So I just want to let you know that there's hope, but it might not be,
Okay. And we understand that, but we want to make certain that the conversation begins now, so we appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Abbiati. Good evening. Name and address and take her away.
Dr. Abbiati, 1946 Letard, in the Lakeside Neighborhood Association community. Good evening, my friends. I'm here on behalf of the Dream Team. Let me give you a little background, and I want to invite you into the vision as leaders in our city. Many of you are aware that several years ago, the University of Wisconsin did a study, and we were evaluated as one of the worst cities and counties, in terms of health initiatives. Out of that was SHAPE 1 in 21. For those who are not aware of 1 in 21, it's a county initiative to be rated number 1, the most healthy county by the year 2021. Therefore, it's named 1 in 21. Well, several months ago, I was approached by one of the leaders in this endeavor, concerned that last year we had 2,500 people engaged in the Seaway race and walk. Of that 2,500, approximately less than 1% were non-white participants. There was grave concern, and knowing my background in dealing with diversity and issues of such, I was asked to help with the process. To make a long story short, we formed what is called the Dream Teams. It's birthed out of the vision of Martin Luther King, where he had a dream that one day blacks, whites, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asians would be able to sit at the table together and work together. So we formed this. Now, here's what happens. You must register for the Seaway Run or Walk. There's a website on the page that I just have given to you. After you register, you can go to this site and register your team. Now, the criteria for running is there are 2 to 6 people that compose a team. The first 2 people must be of different races. The rest of the team is composed of the diversity, but you cannot have more than 2 individuals from the same race. The focus is twofold. One, to endear more people to running and exercising, and to enhance our diversity and racial harmony within our city and county. Now, the walk holds the same criteria in terms of numbers, but instead of individuals, the walk is composed of families, meaning that 2 families, the first 2 families must be of different racial backgrounds. Up to 6 families, no more than 2 families from the same racial background. The prizes for the walk, we desired not to be competitive, so some of the prizes, for example, the team with the oldest and youngest members of different races will win a prize, or the 2 youngest children that complete the walk of different races will win a prize. In doing this, we would not only increase racial, ethnic, minority participation, but will also address the issue of racial inclusion and harmony within the city. Now, part of my vision in engaging this with the Seaway Run 1 in 21 Revel, who's advertising in the YMCA, is to approach the diversity issue not from a position of conflict. Often when we talk about race, it's conflict, and then we have diversity training that nobody wants to attend. We are taking another approach of addressing the race and diversity issue from a sports mentality. Now, I don't know how many of you on the commission ever played sports on a team before. No, it's kind of, huh? Well, you know that when you're on the team, it doesn't matter the race or where they're from on the other team, your goal is to work together as a team. And so we want to endear that type of sports mentality here of working together as a team to bring racial harmony or enhance racial harmony within our city and our county. I've been 9 minutes already? Whoa, thank you. So let me say this. Thank you very much. We're asking every commissioner to engage either the walk or the run, and to create a dream team yourself as part of the vision that we are living into for a more racially inclusive city and county, and we hope to be a trademark for the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll see all the walkers and runners coming through the Nims neighborhood. We have our water station there, and we've been enjoying passing out water all these years for the runners and walkers. Mr. Jennings, how was Florida this year?
It was a lot warmer than it was here. My name is Robert Jennings, and I reside at 3553 Marina View Point. That's in the Harbortown area on the west side. Comment was made earlier about getting something established down on that beach. I'd remind the commission we had a fine pub down there before your actions deceased it. Firstly, a question regarding the mulching property. Yeah. There's a tower being erected on the western side of that property. Today it was probably 40 feet high, and I don't know how long
I'm not aware.
Going to be. Was a permit made? I mean, what is the purpose of that thing?
I do not know.
If it came down during one of our storms, it would definitely impact the traffic on Lakeshore Drive. Okay, the property is posted, so you can't go up there and ask, "What are you guys doing?" And I don't see your permit posted any place here, so that's why I'm asking. Okay.
Okay.
I have a list of things, and I'm just going to give it to my commissioner here, and basically it's for the eyes and ears of the city manager. And I don't want to take time up here because being gone for 6 months, some of these things would be certainly redundant. So glance at it. I wish I had prepared one for each of the commissioners, but did not. Another question here. I understand, I've lived in a lot of different places under different kinds of city government models, and I know that the city manager is responsible for the administration of policies and ordinances. My question has to do with the enforcement of the ordinances. As I drive through this town, I see disabled automobiles in yards, unkept properties, plumbing fixtures, hot water heaters. Many of the boarded up homes are open for casual entry. I saw some kids about high school age today, several blocks on the other side of Terrace, going through a home that the door was wide open, the place was boarded up. So what I'm asking here, who does the inspecting, the enforcement of our ordinances? Boots on the ground. Who is actually observing these conditions in our community?
If it comes to environmental issues like the tall grass and the leaf cleanup, that season begins in April and runs till August, the end of August. And that is through the planning department, and the coordinator is Hope Mitchell. Right now we have 3 inspectors that go out. It has been on a complaint basis. When you see these things, if you contact Hope, she can take care of that and hopefully get our, and we'll get inspectors out. And that also takes, they take care of garbage, refuse. So if there's junk on the yard, those type of issues, the inspections, the environmental inspections through the planning department takes care of that. The junk cars should be called into the police department. And you could do that via either your community officer for Bluffton Beechwood, or call during business hours and get through to the Community Policing Bureau and give them the address and the make and model of the car. And they'll get out. Typically, it is during the warm weather months when they can see the vehicle. There are some restrictions depending on whether or not the yard is enclosed. There are some laws protecting the property owner, of course. When it comes to the vacant buildings should also be called into planning. Make sure that those are on the list. And have we worked through the boarding up issue? And that is through planning as well. When you see a vacant building and you see something funky, call 911 immediately, because if it's a vacant building and people are going in and out, in order to get the feet on the ground, they need to get there when the incident's occurring.
Okay, so it's done on a complaint basis, neighbors?
Right.
Okay.
Right, and we really drive that home during visits at neighborhood association meetings, like, so staff, neighborhood association, board members and the like continue to educate and bring, their citizens in particular neighborhoods up to snuff and get a partnership going with the city staff.
Okay, so it's heartening, for one, to see some interaction here and the questions directed at people that come before the microphone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the commission.
You bet. Thank you. Welcome back for the summer. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the commission? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I touched on it for a second. That was happen to have somebody at my house babysitting it, like he said. You get vandalized. Owner occupant, because he's only a cousin and not a child or a father or mother, I have to list it as a rental property. Of course, it's not my property, but I still have to list it as a rental property. I would like to see that addressed to a different aspect, so owner occupant can be somebody you have in there babysit, because I'm not making money on it.
Right. We continue to look at some of those issues. But we've had some good scam artists in former years.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad are living in my house, and then we find out Mom and Dad have been dead for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, my mother and dad is.
Right. So, but we continue to look at these issues as they come up. We do. Commissioner Hood.
If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Hood, seconded by the Vice Mayor to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Not one? Well, then let us be on our merry ways. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming out.